Okay, what's the war of art? That's a book I'm reading. It talks about the war of art. It talks about that there's a warfare of art, and sometimes, well, you can just see it everywhere. I mean, I can show you tons of examples. In fact, I saw somewhere, it was either in the United Nations or one of the Secretary of Defense. There was some place that they actually were going to do kind of a press conference, and they covered the art form. They covered this painting up with like a tarp, just because they didn't want the art to come through because they were trying to sell a war. I gotta find, there was a documentary somewhere where they in this press conference, this military, I think it was like the UN, they said they covered all the paintings because they were afraid, whoever the CIA people are, they covered the art because they didn't want any of the positive messages of the art to come through when they're trying to sell a war. And so I thought it was interesting that even the CIA on some level knows that there is a power of art. There's a power of the First Amendment. There's a power of expression. And so the war of art, man, what do you do, man? What's your form of expression? Are you a painter? Are you a singer? Are you a rambler? Are you a toker? Midnight smoker? Sinner? Grinner? Well, sometimes I'm all the above. You know, I learned something. In fact, I've had 2 conversations today, and these both happen. You know, I learned something in a 12-step meeting a long time ago it's one of those like reasons why you go to 12-step meetings. I mean, if you really, really, really want just some rigorous, raw honesty, go to a 12-step meeting, because you'll hear people just share their story, and they'll share things. And I heard a lady say something once. I mean, you'll hear a lot of bullshit, but you'll hear people speaking out of their reality of how they came to sobriety. And you know, for me, I haven't ever struggled with alcoholism, thank goodness, but you know, codependence and dysfunctional families and dysfunctional relationships. I mean, you know, I think anybody can benefit from a 12-step meeting, because it's really just about learning how to get healthy thinking. There's even in the literature, it talks about how the bottles are just a symbol. And so if the bottles are a symbol of alcoholism, maybe the real problem is not the drinking, it's the thinking. And then you know, I've been kind of in the 12 really since about 10, 15 years. And then I realized, like, man, I'm more on the codependent side, and how, you know, I might not have picked up a bottle, but I picked up like toxic religion, toxic relationships. I went to anyway, so there's my story. So I was at a 12-step meeting, and this lady was talking about her mother, and she was doing kind of an open share. And in this, she was talking about how, she goes, you know, I learned how to talk to my mom, and I learned not to have, I learned how not to use the word you, Y-O-U. And it was the first time I ever heard like a real person talk about how conflict disappeared whenever we dropped a word, you, Y-O-U. And you know, here's, for example, like, let me just say, for example, like, let's say that, I don't know, what do you want to do? Let's have some conflict. What if I was going to mow your yard, do some landscaping, and I said, it's going to be $100. And then I mow your yard, and I go get paid. And then you respond, you're like, well, you didn't tell me that you were going to get paid. And then you didn't tell me that you wanted to get paid today. And you didn't tell me that you wanted to get paid in U.S. currency. And you didn't tell me that you wanted dollar bills. And you didn't say it was going to be this month. You just riddled me with the word you, Y-O-U. Well, I know enough from the 12 and just dysfunctional relationships that whenever you're in conflict and that person just says you all the time, you know, I mean, because conflict happens, misunderstandings happen, but the word you is very toxic in conflict because it creates separation. And I got a buddy, and you know, and I've known him from ever, and you know, he's probably one of the most you people I've ever met. You know, when you talk with him, you can say anything, and he'll be like you, and I'm like, he'll you all over you. So just try it. In your next relationship or your next conflict, try avoiding the word you, you know? So for example, you know, mow your yard, you don't have the money, say, hey, can I pay you tomorrow? Oh yeah, cool. So just notice that when you drop the word you from conflict, it disappears. Here's another thing that happens, and I learned this like kind of whenever I was going through like kind of my hashtag MRA stuff, whenever the legal system is riddled with you. Because when you say you, what you're doing is you're deflecting something off to somebody else. So, for example, if you say, you know, hey, Mr. Jonathan Fibonacci, did you speed that day? I'm like, well, you guys shouldn't have been so mean. You're like, what the fuck does that have to? No, I'm trying to no, were you speeding? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? And so anyway, just try that out. Maybe this can help you. You know, this whole channel is just my own rambles and trying to bring a little bit of light and love. But next time you are in conflict, notice how the word you, well, you test it. Does the word you help or hurt conflict? Does it increase conflict or does it decrease conflict? And if you're like me, you'll see that when you're dealing with a person who's kind of unhealthy, who loves to fight, loves to debate, loves to spin, loves to deflect, they have a favorite word in conflict. And it's you. And so just test it out. Next time you're in a conflict, especially with relationships that really matter, look at how the word you can really cause a further division and also an escalation of conflict. So I statements are wonderful, especially in conflict. And it's very hard to have conflict using I statements. I statements. Test it, try it out. One thing I like about the 12, man, is it doesn't say, hey, you got to believe this shit. It just, hey, here are some suggestions. So there's your I statements. Together better than one. Well, you didn't say you didn't like this music. You didn't tell me that you were going to listen to this music. Well, you didn't say that you were going to. You see, so it sounds so fucking ridiculous. So, hey, you know, I prefer this song. Oh, really? Tell me. Well, I like this song. You're like, you like that song? Well, what's wrong? See, anyway, test it out. Try it out. You. It's a bad word in conflict. Email me, Americana417@gmail.com. You.